With energy prices soaring, along with global temperatures, the demand for green energy in general, and solar in particular, has been rising. The desire for cheaper, cleaner energy that is more insulated from the price shocks that might arise from war or natural disasters is a great motivator for adopting more solar power. Fun fact though, my very first hate comment argued, with some very colourful and not YouTube-friendly language, that solar is not cheap, it's really expensive, that nuclear is the only true cheap or efficient energy source, and then some conspiracy theory stuff about China. Now, the question of nuclear power's green credentials deserves its own video. It's on the list, but let me know if you're interested and I can bump it up the schedule. I'm not sure what I can say about China other than, yes, they're racing ahead with this because they've made it a priority, nothing stopping us doing the same. So today's episode of Dr. Eleanor Tufnell Makes a Video Motivated by Spite will focus on the question of price. Hi, I'm Dr. Eleanor Tufnell, an environmental scientist. In this video, I'll take you through 4 more myths about solar power. I'll discuss how expensive it is up front, its impact on energy bills and house prices, then on to how much waste it will ultimately produce, along with how much of it can be recycled. Myth 9. Solar is very expensive. The argument is something like this. Solar is actually really expensive, that solar projects are utterly reliant on government subsidies and would not be economically viable without them. But the reality is quite different. The International Energy Agency's World Energy Outlook 2020 report noted that the world's best solar power schemes are now offering the, and I quote, cheapest electricity in history, and noted that in most major countries, solar power is cheaper than either coal or gas. The 2024 report goes further and notes that building solar power plants is now cheaper than building new fossil fuel plants, nearly everywhere in the world. That 2024 report also notes the dangers to energy security and coordinated reduction of emissions from geopolitical tensions, noting both the ongoing war in Ukraine and the escalating conflict in the Middle East, which, has continued to escalate since 2024. Such conflicts have disproportionately affected supplies of oil and natural gas compared to renewables, leading to energy insecurity and price spikes. So if solar is cheaper, this could help insulate countries from volatile energy markets and save countries a lot of money. But where did the idea that solar is expensive come from? Putting aside the various fossil fuel-funded lobbying groups, I suspect part of it is that solar used to be much more expensive. Over the past 15 years alone, the price of electricity from solar has dropped by 88%. Since 1976, the price has dropped 99.6%. How did it get so cheap? Well, to understand that, you need to understand what drives the price of a particular energy source. For fossil fuels and nuclear energy, the costs tend to depend on the price of fuel and the plant's operational costs, and of course the cost of building them in the first place. However, renewables, such as solar and wind, have often very low operating costs and no costs for buying fuel, as the sun and the wind come to them. Instead, the cost of renewables largely comes from the cost of the panels or turbines themselves, and this largely stems from the cost of the technology itself. As more are built, the more opportunities we have to learn about and further develop the technology in general, and the production process in particular. So, over time, we've gotten better and more efficient at making them, and as a result, they've become cheaper. As the technology becomes more effective, the more demand there is for it, which leads to more improvements, which leads to more demand, and the prices keep going down. But how much money is solar power actually saving? Well, according to the IEA's World Energy Outlook in 2024, through the adoption of renewable energy, including solar, China avoided fossil fuel costs that added up to $179.8 billion, reduced air pollution-related health costs by an equivalent of $261.1 billion, and by doing so, reduced CO2 emissions by 2.89 billion tons. China is the world leader here, but many other countries are also saving money. The US, which is, how can I put this kindly, not known for its enthusiastic adoption of renewable energy, avoided $24.1 billion in fossil fuel costs, $21.5 billion in benefit from mitigation of air pollution, and avoided 597 million tons of CO2 emissions. So even in the US, where gas-powered electricity is much cheaper than much of the world, solar plants, without subsidies, are extremely close to US gas plant prices, and solar is projected to become even cheaper going forward. Myth 10. Electricity bills go up with more solar. With the ripple effects of the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East, energy prices have not only risen, but have become increasingly volatile. While, of course, the true reason for this is the disruption these events have caused to fuel, energy infrastructure, and the disruption of global gas and oil markets, this hasn't stopped some from falsely claiming that renewable energy is to blame. I actually get comments to this effect on some of my videos, claiming that cheap renewables are a crazy environmentalist lie. Green countries pay more. Now, some of these people think everything renewable is just more expensive generally, but the more sophisticated, but still wrong, argument is that as green energy sources have some variability, the electricity they generate might be cheap, but they must be driving up overall costs by requiring flexibility, storage, and/or backup. Proponents of this idea like to point to countries which have high renewable energy and also high electricity prices. For example, the UK met 45% of its energy needs from renewables in 2024, but still has some of the highest energy prices in Europe. What this ignores, however, is that high prices are largely driven by fossil fuels rather than renewables. In the UK, the wholesale price of power is nearly always set by gas. How electricity prices are set is very complex, and factors include wider system costs, generation, standing charges, and the structure of the electricity market, etc. But on average, over the last 24 years, renewables have actually decreased electricity prices. I covered in my first video on solar myths the reliability and efficiency of solar power, but this also translates into its costs. Even with batteries, storage, and flexibility, solar works out cheaper than fossil fuels. And if you're wondering, yes, it's also cheaper than nuclear power. Myth 11. Solar damages house prices. Now, given that housing prices in many places are astronomically high, I feel weird about this next bit, but do bear with me. There is a concern that adding solar panels, either to houses directly or building a solar plant close by, will negatively affect house prices. Add to this an understandable suspicion of industry and government in general, plenty of people are concerned that property prices could plummet while the companies and landowners who are developing a solar project make lots of money. As property trends can be quite complex, it's also important to take other factors into account when calculating the impact of solar farms. It's quite possible to erroneously attribute falling house prices to solar development, when they were declining for entirely unrelated reasons. There has been wild speculation about what impact solar development might have on property prices. But when studied, it was found that, while proximity to solar development did have an effect on house prices, the effect was tiny. Houses within half a mile of utility-scale solar farms had resale prices an average 1.5% lower than houses further away. This varies a little, of course, but other studies have shown similarly low impacts on housing prices. One study of houses in Massachusetts and Rhode Island saw prices for houses near solar farms reduced by 1.7%. Another looked at houses in the Netherlands and found a 2.6% reduction in house prices. These studies also found that, while very close proximity to a large solar project did see some small drop in house prices, this impact tends to fade rapidly for houses a mile or more away. This small financial impact could be completely offset by compensation initiatives and community benefit schemes. Conversely, renewable energy installations may actually improve not just house prices, but mean local income. One study that examined 70 solar farms in the US Midwest found that utility-scale solar projects increased local property values by between 0.5% and 2%, with smaller installations having more positive effects than larger ones. The same can be said for wind power, by the way, as another study found that wind turbines increased house value by 2.6% and local income by roughly 5%. So the impact of renewable energy installations on property prices is small and can even be positive. Myth 12. Solar will result in a lot of waste. This topic comes up a lot in my comment sections. I'm often asked how recyclable solar panels are and if they'll be generating a lot of waste. I don't think it should be disputed that solar panels will generate waste. But the two important questions for me are A, how much waste can be recycled? And B, how much is that waste in comparison to other generators of waste, such as from fossil fuels? Estimating this is complicated by the fact that over the last 10 years, solar technology has improved significantly, and so has the average lifespan of panels, from 12 years to 35. At the same time, estimates for the potential solar capacity that will be installed have also increased. If we take these factors into account, estimates for the cumulative solar waste by 2050 put it between 54 million metric tons and 160 million metric tons. But this is before recycling. And it sounds like a lot, lot, but when we compare it to other sources of waste, it is a drop in the ocean. For example, coal-fired power stations produce 50 times that amount as waste ash per unit of electricity generated. E-waste, plastic waste, and oily sludge from crude oil production all exceed the waste generated by solar significantly, and municipal waste dwarfs it. By 2050, solar panels could generate 2 to 5 times less waste than sludge from crude oil production and 300 to 800 times less than coal ash. This, of course, assumes that the fossil fuel industry continues at current levels, which hopefully it will not. Waste from solar, and of course other sources, can be managed by using reliable models, being proactive about maintenance and repair, reusing where possible, and, at the end of life, recycling. Sadly, not all solar panel waste has been recycled, so policy changes would probably be needed to encourage or require the recycling and processing of solar panel waste, but it remains entirely doable. At present, around 95% of the materials in solar panels can be recovered when recycled. A bigger problem is that many solar panels were not designed with recycling in mind, and current methods of recycling them can cost more than the components one gets out of the process. Part of this is that solar is a relatively young technology, so much of the techniques to recycle it are still being developed. As solar grows, the technology to recycle it should spin up alongside. Solar panels are primarily made of glass and aluminium, which are both readily recyclable, though again the techniques for doing so in solar panels are still developing efficiency. What tends to concern people most are the heavy metals they may contain, and that they may contaminate areas either when a panel is damaged or when it is recycled. Cadmium, for example, is a highly toxic metal and is used in some solar panels. However, less than 5% of solar panels contain cadmium, and in the ones that do, it constitutes between 0.04 and 0.07% of the product. These are also only seen in utility-scale installations and have dedicated recycling streams, at least in the US. Lead soldering coating is used on the crystalline silicon modules used in some solar panels, but is packaged securely. The quantity of lead is comparable to that found in modern mobile phones, by the way. And in solar panels, it needs to be packaged securely, as solar panels are designed to endure 30-plus years of wind and rain, so keeping its internal metals internal is a priority. Many manufacturers are also switching to lead-free soldering. Much the same can be said for other heavy metals that are occasionally used in solar panel manufacturing. So far, assessments of the risks to human health from end-of-life solar panels have found the risks of heavy metals leaching out are below US screening levels, and water contamination levels were within the guidelines from the World Health Organization. Conclusion. So I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the costs of solar power, from manufacture to end of life. I know there's a lot of misinformation floating around, and I want to do my best to address it, while also introducing you to some genuinely nifty technology. As always, I've left a library of links in the description and possibly pinned comment, so if you want to know more or just check my sources, they're all there for you. If you have enjoyed, please let the algorithm know by liking, commenting, and subscribing, so that you can hear every time I release new content. Please also share this video with anyone you think might find it interesting. So, as always, thank you for watching.